Well, exciting day as it always is when you get to officially bring in new members to your football program. It's just the beginning for these guys, but it's also the end of a lot of hard work that's put in by so many people to convince them that Montana State in Bobcat football is going to be the right place for their next step. And it is such an important decision, one that we don't take lightly. So, it's a process that we're as thorough as we can possibly be, and a lot of these relationships go back multiple years, and then there's some cases where they go back multiple weeks. So that's the nature of recruiting, and it's about moving your football program forward. In this new world of college football, which is not just new this year, but with transfer portal and NIL, it's you gotta stay nimble. You gotta be on your toes, and you can't be surprised by anything. And I know a couple weeks back we had a few members of our team go in the transfer portal, and I spoke to that a little bit on Monday, but that creates opportunity for others. So we understand that's going to be part of how it goes, and we need to be able to continue to build our team from the ground up, and primarily do that with high school players, of which we had 18 today, but then also with transfers, which we had 1 as of today, but we're certainly in the midst of recruiting a few others between now and the time the semester starts in a little under a month. So 18 high school players. Our foundation has been and will be starting with Montana high school players. Fortunate to sign 8 of them today. We feel like if we can get a good number from our state, that's the absolute place we need to start, and really feel good about the guys we are bringing in from the state of Montana. And then we look at our neighboring states. 2 of which we signed one player, one from Wyoming, one from Idaho, and then extended to the Pacific Northwest and Washington, Oregon. And this year, very fortunate to sign 5 young men from the state of Washington. We've continued to hit to the populated areas of California and Texas, and it just so happens right now, as we stand today, we'll sign 3 Texas natives, and excited about that group, and we'll continue to look at those areas. Simply because the population, the level of football played in there, and then the continued connections within our team of guys having successful, impactful experiences while they're here. When a young man can come up here from, whether it's Dallas, Houston, LA, you name it, and he can get around guys that are from, not always the same school by any means, but the same area. And those players here can articulate very well that they're having a great experience both on and off the field. It makes the recruiting process that much easier. So that wraps up the high school 18. Like I said, we're adding 1 transfer today, Rohan Jones out of University of Maine. That's the one that I would say is 2 weeks in the making, but really appreciate Rohan jumping on board, and really excited about what he's going to be able to do. So other numbers, I know we're split. We're 9 on offense right now, or 10 on offense, 9 on defense at this point. I think we went into this process thinking that number would be fairly balanced, and that's where it looks today. I know we'll look to add a player or 2 on each side of the ball from here on out, so we suspect that number is going to remain fairly balanced as this class ultimately finishes up through February, and a lot of cases where there's ads in the springtime as well. I think people that I know that I need to recognize first and foremost, Chandler Arbazani's done a great job as our general manager. A lot of people wonder what that entails. It entails a lot. He handles our operations to a great extent, but then he also heads up our recruiting. So our recruiting plan, our recruiting contact in particular when young men and their families are on campus, and he's done, this has been year 2 for him. He's done a terrific job in organizing those efforts and making the young men and their families feel more than welcome when they're here on campus. And on that note, the help that we get from from people across campus, whether that's in specific academic areas, whether it's just across the way in student athlete academics, admissions office. It's really a collaborative effort when we have young people here on campus to be able to tell the story of what an experience at Montana State would look like. We had a lot of these guys that we signed were here on game days. So what goes into that is certainly an amazing game day experience where there's so many positive touch points for these guys, whether it's fans in the stands or more so just people they interact with in the community. And I do want to thank our fans, the Bozeman community, for just being genuine in those scenarios. I think guys leave here knowing that they're going to be going to a place where football is really important and they're going to be supported in a tremendous way. Certainly our players, I already alluded to it, they're a big part of recruiting. When our players host recruits and are around recruits, and they can speak very clearly of their experience and how it's going for them and be genuine. That's maybe the most impactful interaction that a young man and his family will get. So appreciate our players' efforts, and they know that we need to keep moving this football program forward, and their participation in the recruiting process is extremely important. Certainly our assistant coaches come into play, whether it's the recruiting specific areas within our recruiting footprint, the position coaches, the relationships that they build with specific position players. That's a painstaking many hours, many conversations that go into building those relationships, and certainly want to thank them all for their efforts. It is a collective effort for sure, and we feel like we have a great institution to sell, an amazing community. Don't take that for granted. And I spoke to our game day experience, but I think what that shows young men and their families that football matters here. They're gonna get an opportunity to play college football in an environment and in front of fans like you're supposed to, like you want to, like you dream of. And a lot of these guys from outside of our footprint, probably 2-3 years ago, maybe didn't see themselves at Montana State, but as it gets closer and we become, a real key or a real possible choice for them, the way they see our opportunity, I think it becomes pretty clear in the experience they get because of what they're looking for ultimately in a college experience, whether it is the institution, the community, or the football program all comes together. So what I'll do next is I'll go through all the guys alphabetically and just speak to them to some degree. I say alphabetically would be the high school kids. I'll start with Rohan though. Rohan Jones, a tight end, really a hybrid, probably the purest form of what an H-back might look like. We didn't necessarily go into this recruiting cycle thinking we were going to take a transfer tight end. I think as our season went along, and we played without Derek Snell for six games, the second half of the season, it became so obvious how critical a guy like Derek was, and if we could get that again in the recruiting process, let's go after it. So opportunity became available once we got out of the season to add a guy to that position room, and I told Coach Walker that Monday after the season ended to just look and see what's out there. And I'd gone recruiting that week, got back at the end of the week and looked at what he had shown, and it was apparent that Rohan possessed a lot of the same skills. I'm not saying he is Derek Snell, but the Waves utilized that main. A lot of that meshed with how we want to utilize that hybrid type of guy. So super excited about what he's going to bring. He's got 2 years to play, but he's 22 years old at the same time. Coming out of Montreal, Quebec, Canada, he had played post-grad university football for a couple years before he went to the University of Maine, and so very mature young man. I think he knows what he's looking for, and I think it really is one of those cases of where right place, right time on both sides, that this all came together, and I know we play them as well next year, which is a sidebar. But really excited about who he is as a player and who he is as a person. Anytime you take transfers in, you're real sensitive to how they will fit in the locker room and with our guys, and I have no doubt that Rohan's going to fit in real well. Going through our high school kids now, starting with Ryan Bowles, linebacker out of Woodinville, Washington. We aim to sign a couple linebackers in this class. Obviously the guys we've been playing with between Nolan departing and then Danny McCade, even Cole Bullock all being seniors next year, it was real important that we get a guy that was pretty far along physically. So we were really selected to figure out who that was going to be. Ryan was here at camp in the summer and felt like if we could sign Ryan Bowles, we'd be on point with what we were looking for at that position. And he committed, and then he went on and had a tremendous year both on offense and defense for a playoff team in Woodinville, and they made the state playoffs in Washington, and just really pleased with who he is as an athlete, who he is as a linebacker to this point. Obviously there's development that needs to occur, and he doesn't need to play necessarily day one, but a guy like him, you tab as a guy that could play pretty early in his career, especially with those guys being seniors next year. So really excited about Ryan and what he can bring to the table. Next up, Seth Brock out of Boise, Idaho Eagle High School. Aim to take a defensive end in this class. It's a position group that we have pretty widespread depth, but we lost a couple guys this year to graduation, and that will obviously continue, and we need to continue to stock that position group. That's a position group that's vitally important in our defense. Seth's a guy that came up here last spring, not for camp but for junior day, and liked what we saw in him, and I think we felt like at least we had our foot in the door on the recruiting side. Continued along the evaluation process with him, and really liked how he played this fall, both on offense and defense for a very good Eagle High School team. He's also a wrestler, so there's an aggressive nature to him that showed up on the football field, and obviously that needs to carry over to our defensive end position. Those guys need to be very good athletes, but they need to be willing to be physical, and I think Seth's certainly that. Next up, Key Christensen, athlete. We intend on playing him at receiver out of Dillon. Led Beaver Head County to a state championship at the Class A level. Really liked how Key played this year, and he led his team in every which way, playing quarterback, playing safety, being impactful in special teams. Winning a state championship at any level isn't easy, and you need guys like Key to take it home, and Key was biggest in the biggest moments. So excited to get another player out of Dillon. Excited to get a player whose father Matt played here, and I think those stories are always important because I think a kid like Key who's growing up a Bobcat, it means that much more to him, and we trust that he's going to do everything he can to make the most of it. Next up, Mason Deathman, Brockton, Montana, but goes to Freud High School as part of the Freud Medicine Lake co-op. Made it to the six-man championship this year. Has been part of championship teams earlier in his high school career. Tremendous basketball player as well. Mason's certainly been on our radar for a while now. Big raw athlete, 6'4", 200 plus pounds. You watch him on the six-man field. He does everything. He's played quarterback a whole bunch. He's played more of a tight end position. He's played safety, he's played linebacker, he's played wherever they needed. And in the six-man game, to go as far as they did, you need a star, and Mason was clearly that star. And he's a guy that we see as a developmental guy, meaning it might take a year or two, but no different than some of our other small town guys. The athleticism, the competitiveness that he brings, we trust that he's gonna find a way. Next up, alphabetically, Aiden Kaplan, O-lineman, Lake Creek High School down in Montgomery, Texas, just north of Houston. Aiden's a guy that came to camp this summer. times. Unfortunately, when we had a couple of these guys at that camp, we got rained out, we got lightninged out, so we got to see enough to measure him, and I know Coach Johnson got to see enough to do some initial drills, but it wasn't going to be about what he did necessarily at camp. It was going to be about what he did as a senior. And Aiden, playing at a high level down in Texas, really had a good year, and continued to do the things that we look for in our linemen. Play with a physical nature, play really hard. He was playing tackle for Lake Creek, but we see him more as an interior guy. All of our offensive linemen in particular are guys that we see redshirting, but at the same time, that position room is going to turn over a bunch in the next couple of years. So guys like Aiden, have to be on that track to be ready to go in a couple of years. And physically, at 6'2", 285, really strong in the weight room. We see that out of Aiden. Next up, Ontario Latin Henley, running back out of Washington High School in Tacoma. Extremely talented young man. Had started his career at Eastside Catholic, transferred back essentially to his home district in Washington High School as a junior. Has been crazy productive over time, and Eastside Catholic is certainly one of the top programs in the state. And then transferring back to Washington, maybe didn't have the same supporting cast, but continued to do whatever they were asked. You watch some of his film this year; he was doing all kinds of things, and we see him as a running back. But a guy that can be versatile, a guy that can catch the ball in the backfield, a guy that can be on special teams and add potentially to the return game. Again, a room that has some really good depth, won't necessarily be pressed into action, but over the long haul, we feel like Ontario's got a bright future. Next up, Rocky Lencioni from here in Bozeman. Part of a great program there, Bozeman High, obviously state champs this year. Rocky was a key component both on offense and defense, playing receiver on offense and safety on defense. Not only this year's team, but the runner-up team the previous year as well. And really like what Rocky brings to the table as a competitor. And you see it on the basketball court as well. And he's bigger than I think people think. At 6'3", 210, he probably doesn't look that. And that tight end room for us is a collection of a lot of different body types. Ultimately what Rocky will need to get to weight-wise, we'll see. That'll take a couple years to maybe get in that 230, 235 range, but tremendous ball skills. The catches, I'm sure you guys had him on the highlight reels week after week. The catches that he came up with through the course of the year, that's real natural to him. And the way he was, I think the aggressive nature he played on defense, really like how that translates to his ability to be physical. Now, and again, we use our tight ends in a lot of different ways, and we see a real place for Rocky down the road. Really excited to add him to the program. Jace McMillan, DB out of Katie Tompkins High School down in the Houston area. Jace is a young man that's also Drew Polidor's high school that I think there was a lot of recruiting throughout this process, and I think Coach John Baptiste, we call him Bap, but he recruits that area. Did a good job identifying that Jace was a guy that we'd have a real good shot at. Got Brian Shepard, our corners coach, involved through the process. I think really developed a solid relationship with those guys. Jace was up for a game late in the season, and really fell in love with our environment. I think you recruit those Texas kids from those big programs that are used to playing in front of people, and they're used to football mattering. Our place translates really well. Jace is a fast kid too, and he's going to do well on the track this spring, and certainly we feel like that translates well to how he's going to play that corner position. Also plays basketball, but really excited about Jace. Jace's commitment, considering all the different places that he had options to look at. Ryan Dansel's up next. Ryan's a young man from Bozeman as well. Went to Gallatin High School. Thought Ryan really came on the scene this last calendar year. Really starting with a great track season. He was second in the long jump. Actually, was second to Coulter Petrie, who was on our team as well. But jumped out of camp this summer. At our team camp, he was the fastest guy in camp, and I'd seen Ryan play, with my boys playing over at Gallatin a bunch between basketball and football, but, really thought he blossomed this year, playing that corner position, playing some receiver, has good size, good speed, is explosive, as evidence of the long jump numbers from last year, really tackled well this year, and, we think his best days are ahead, and really excited about Ryan and just what he's going to become in these years to come. Dalton Noble out of hometown's Clancy, but goes to Jefferson County in Boulder. Dalton's a lineman that we've been on for quite some time, and I think really built a solid relationship going back, to the winter actually last year. Felt like Dalton's the type of developmental lineman that you're looking for. Has good height, has a good build, is athletic. He's a good basketball player. He played on both sides of the ball, really played hard. Came over here a bunch. I think really, his relationship with Montana State just in general was very solid. I know through the process he ultimately committed somewhere else for a time, but through the last probably 3-4 weeks, became apparent that we'd have a good chance to get back in on it, and staying closer to home, playing for the Bobcats, going to school here. That combination of things won out, and we're thrilled about Dalton. Dalton's a very intelligent young man. Like I said before, has the frame, has all the athleticism, and has a determination about him that you look at guys in that room that they need, and he might be a year away from being a 280, 90-pound guy, but he's going to get there. So really excited that we got Dalton in the fold, and that was a good get over the last couple weeks to make sure that happened. Next up, Brendan Ross, DB from Rockwall down in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and very good program down there. As we start evaluating DBs, they don't all need to be the same. We really have 4 different positions: the 2 corner spots, and then the three between the nickel, the strong, and the free safeties. And became apparent that Brendan really fit with the position versatility that we're looking at. Was really played a strong safety spot at the high school level, played at a very high level, but has the flexibility, I think, to play the nickel spot, can run, can tackle, can cover, and again, like Jace came up here for a game late in the season, and I think the same thing applied, that this place really made sense to him as far as coming from Texas, coming from a place where there's fans in the stands, there's expectations, all those things. He was real excited to jump on board, and really pleased to have a guy like Brendan, because Brendan's a guy that those DBs that can come in day one and be able to compete for opportunities. Next up, Dane Steele, wide receiver, Sheridan, Wyoming, the third of the Steele brothers. And I tell him all the time, he's the best of the 3 brothers, and everybody gets a laugh out of that. But we've had Coy here, obviously, and Brock now as a redshirt freshman going into a sophomore year. They're all a little bit different. I will say that Dane size-wise and some of those things probably compares more to Coy than to Brock. But then the pedigree, Coy played basketball. Dane's a top-level wrestler. And opportunity for them all to succeed in the Sheridan program has been there. And Dane, I think his numbers, the way the team has done the last couple years, and he was named the Max Preps Wyoming State Player of the Year. Just yesterday, I saw he's done exceptional things. He's been part of a program, a Sheridan program. The success they've had over the past decade, and how their players are coached, has been evident both with the Steele brothers and the Kuhn brothers here. So to get another one out of those two families, we're really excited about it, and feel like Dane's got a real bright future, whether it's at receiver, in the return game potentially, and certainly just being involved in special teams in general. Next up, Heiji Tenupo, D-tackle out of Eastside Catholic, was a teammate of Ontario for a couple years. They're from a pretty similar neighborhood in Tacoma. AJ played the 4 years up there. AJ's a big dude. He's all of 6'2 plus, 295 pounds, extremely athletic, played both O and D line. Again, I mentioned it before, Eastside Catholic's a very good program. in the Seattle area, and AJ was certainly one of their best players this year, and super excited about what he brings as far as that size and athleticism. He is, like all our guys, has to develop, but less development there, certainly on the weight and strength side than most might have. So, I think AJ is a guy that's going to have a profound impact here. Beyond the size, though, just like I said, the athleticism and the way he plays and the passion he plays the game with is exactly what we're looking for. Next up, Luvens Valsen from Auburn. Luvens, did I say Lucen? Luvens. I'm going pretty fast here. Luvens Valsen, okay. Seeing, again, we talked about it relative to Rohan, how that position group for us has evolved, having guys with versatility. We're looking for something maybe a little bit different than most. And Luvens is, 6'1", maybe in change, 210 really put together, played like receiver more for them, but they'd motion him back in, he'd carry the football, they'd throw screens to him. So you see a guy that has all these skills. He'd flip over to the other side, play defensive end. He's on a state championship basketball team. He can jump out of the gym. But body type wise, it's maybe not something that everybody's looking for, but it was exactly what we were looking for. His collection of skills and what he'll bring to that tight end room maybe a couple years down the road. He's a guy that was a basketball player primarily growing up, transitioned more to football probably between sophomore and junior year, and really excelled this year and made plays in so many different ways. So really excited about the versatility he brings, the unique nature of all the things he's done, relative to a Derek Snell coming in here and being more of a high school running back, and then again what he was able to do. So trying to again mold that room and have a lot of different guys as far as their body types, their skill sets is what we're after, and Leuven's really fulfilled what we were looking for from a high school perspective. Next up, Hudson Weens, D tackle from here in Bozeman. To say we've had this long-standing relationship is to slight it. I remember going in probably to look at Everett Carr, maybe in particular, when Hudson was just a sophomore, and seeing them in a morning workout, and certainly taking note from that point forward that Hudson would be a guy down the road that we would be after. And really from that point forward, the number of times he's been over at here at campus, it's almost like he's been part of the team for a couple of years. And he's continued to get better and better through the junior year into the senior year, and was certainly a key component of that state championship, playing center, playing nose, oftentimes taking on double teams, triple teams, and played his tail off all year. And he translates well to what our defensive tackles have looked like coming out of high school, and I suspect he's gonna, playing one side of the ball, he's gonna be able to continue to flourish. So to get both those guys from Bozeman High off that team was really important to us. They both jumped on board a while back, and we've had long-standing relationships with the both of them, probably Hudson in particular. Next up, another Bozeman product, Josh Woodbury out of Gallatin High School. Josh is a guy that has played a lot of football for Gallatin, but at the same time has dealt with a fair amount of injuries. And then this year, fortunately, had this year where it all clicked for him. He was healthy. He was all over the field, both on offense and defense. I had good fortune to see him play quite a bit this fall, and in every game, there was no doubt that Josh was going to be right in the middle of the fray on defense, and then he was going to be able to make a few plays on the offensive side. Another guy that had his father Mike played here, so growing up a Bobcat was certainly part of his story, but more so, this was about Josh having this senior season where he earned this opportunity, and couldn't be more happy to get him in the program, because I know we're going to get everything out of Josh. Josh is going to put everything he has into it, and he will trust that he won't be denied, and we see him as a linebacker right now, and what he's able to contribute there, but then also on special teams down the road, I think is that's something we can count on. So really excited about Josh and Ryan from Gallatin again, and Hudson and Rocky from Bozeman to have 4 guys here from in town. Speaks to those programs, but also speaks to those guys wanting to stay home because this is the program they grew up watching. A couple guys left. Jabez Woods, receiver out of Graham Kapowson, just south of Tacoma, Spanaway, Washington. Runner-ups in Washington at the highest level. Jabez is a guy that he was a key contributor to all that. Used in so many different ways. 5'11", 180. He's squeezing everything he can out of that. But whether it's jet sweeps, screens, down the field throws, he was returns, a key player on that team that had so much success. And he is a competitor, and that's one thing. That's the common thread of those 5 Washington guys. Real competitors and guys that you feel that they want to achieve at a high level, and Jabez is certainly that. And the way we want to use our receivers is in a multitude of ways, and Jabez brings that versatility, that position group day one. Last up on the list, Braden Zimmer, O-lineman out of Billings West. Braden's a guy that I saw last year in basketball, and you say that's what a tackle's supposed to look like. 6'6", probably at that time, 220 going through the basketball season last year, but really hadn't quite got there on the football field. Last year as a junior was his first year playing offensive line. Also played basketball. I played baseball growing up, so really, I don't think became a lineman in its truest sense until this year. And then he had a terrific year for West, playing on both sides of the ball, showing the athleticism, showing how hard he played, and showing a toughness about him. And those are all things that we look for. And he's got this frame. He's playing basketball again, so weight-wise, the 225 is probably pretty accurate. But he is 6'6", and his ability to put the weight on is just a matter of putting that basketball down and starting to be committed to it as far as the way that looks in the weight room and eating and those type of things. But really excited about Braden's athleticism and how that's going to translate a couple years down the road. So that's the group. Take a breath here, maybe get a drink of water, but then answer any questions that you guys have.
I guess we've talked about the recruiting areas that your coaches have. Can you maybe just for the record or whatever go kind of detail which specific areas?
Yeah. So Bobby Daly is our primary recruiter here in Montana. And Bobby in these last couple of years to me has done everything we've asked, building relationships with the high school coaches, building off being a Montana native, but then also the relationships he's able to develop with these guys through the process. Justin Udy recruits Idaho, his home state. Sam Mix recruits Washington, his home state. And obviously, Sam did a really good job this year, and not that he should get all the credit, but he gets a lot of the credit as far as developing those relationships with all 5 of those young men to start. Sean Howe, who does hail from Oregon, recruits the part of Oregon that we recruit, and then also recruits down in Southern California. Tyler Walker recruits San Diego in the Inland Empire in Southern California. Brian Shepard recruits Central California, but then was also very involved with the defensive backs in Texas. Nick John Baptiste recruits Houston, where he is from, and then between Al Johnson, Coach Garza, and Coach Housewright, they all recruited in the Metroplex, Dallas-Fort Worth. So I think I got all the areas covered there.
Yeah. And you said there's a specific area of Oregon that you guys recruit?
Well, we just don't recruit the whole state. Portland probably down to Eugene is where we focus for the most part. Yeah.
And then I was, I just wondering if the changes with the portal and NIL in the last few years, how have you kind of adjusted your recruiting, or everybody adjusted their recruiting style and methods, I guess?
Well, I think you can't be blind to the fact that your season ends. You might lose some guys. I guess that's where you start. So you're trying to work ahead. You're trying to retain those guys and do everything you can to make our experience as impactful. That it's not one that guys are willing to leave. But when you start talking about the money getting thrown around, that's a world that we can't necessarily compete in, and that's the nature of it at this level. I think it's, even you go look crossways at the highest level, that's probably the nature of it a little bit too. So that's part of it. I think you got to be just ready to react in those scenarios. You have to have at least a mindset that, okay, if we're going to have to replace some guys, we better keep our eyes open to see what's out there. But I think at the same time, where it has benefited us, not as many people are recruiting high school kids. I'd be anxious to see what the percentage of, let's say, Power 5 signing classes or whatever, what that looks like relative to maybe what it looked like 5 years ago. Whatever the percentage is, the number of high school kids getting signed by those programs is much lower. So then that becomes this trickle down, and I think there's a better high school kid out there on the other side for us if we can identify them. So yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that have changed in the last 5 years, and you have to change the best you can with them, and know that it's probably still changing on the fly, and each year is a new year as far as what your roster looks like relative to how that's potentially going to change. And at the same time, you want to keep bringing in guys that you can develop, and if you develop them so well that someone else is going to want them, that's just part of it. You hopefully what you were able to provide for them while they're here, and vice versa, was pretty impactful, and I think that's been the case. So while it's frustrating, it's part of the world we're in. You got to be able to move on from it.
Obviously, the NFL guys you advertise in recruiting. I don't know if this is something you ever say to them directly, but is like guys going to Washington and Cal, is that something that ever comes up in a conversation with the recruit of like, hey, you could?
You know what? I don't know that that's a world that we want to get in a whole lot, because then you're making it before you've even started about the next opportunity. And if we can make it maybe about the NFL opportunity, that's great. But no, I think you recruit guys you think are really going to enjoy being here, that have the capacity to develop, and while they're here really make an impact. That's what it's got to be about. And I think guys can make the NFL from here. We've shown that. I think they're looking everywhere. So you hope guys understand that, and they want Montana State to be their entire journey, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's gonna always play out that way.
Like Coach, you mentioned, the tight ends, adding a few guys there, losing Trayton and Derek. Was that a position group that you really wanted to find more depth in? I guess just could you name the certain position groups if they're ready, you were really looking to add the depth with the loss of seniors?
Yeah, I think that position group, as far as if you said per capita, would have been the one hit as much as any. So yeah, we went into it, really liking some of our younger guys that haven't quite done a lot yet, haven't been given that opportunity, but no, we wanted to add from the bottom up, continue to add from the bottom up. And then, it became apparent again, as we were going through the tail end of the season in particular, that, Leuven's, okay, we think has some real potential to be like a Derek Snell, but that's not going to happen next year. So if we could find a guy that could become that or something along those lines sooner than later, we wanted to be able to do that. I think Ryan Largan played really well at the end of the year, but he's not everything either. None of the guys are everything, so really trying to keep them, within the skill set that they have is something. So yes, tight end, I think we're always going to bring a lineman in, so that number, is probably pretty typical. And I think the same could be said looking at the defensive side with the secondary. I mentioned that in linebacker. I felt that was a real important thing, and that's not numbers, but that was, we got the two guys, but how we saw Ryan in particular early on was really important. And then, D-line, maybe not big numbers, but certainly wanted to find some guys that we felt like, you turn over maybe a year that could be on that field. So, I think each and every year you hope that you have a recruiting class made up of all positions. I know the one position that we didn't recruit this year was quarterback. That was pretty intentional from the start with our depth, especially our young depth that we do feel really good about.
Coulter, do you have anything?
Yep. Hey, Coach, can you hear me? Sorry.
Yep, got you. Put you to sleep, I bet.
No, it's all good. Is there like a characteristic or something that these guys have in common when you're looking at it? Like, especially when you're bringing in a class full of so many high school guys, you sort of personality evaluate to see how they fit together.
Well, yeah, you want a group that that's competitive, that's hungry. It doesn't, and that's sometimes that the level of success they can have at the high school level isn't always completely within their control. But how do they compete when they're out there? How hungry are they for this opportunity? I think so much can be made out of recruiting rankings and stars and that kind of stuff. So we don't get caught up in any of that. It's just how competitive are they? How hungry? And then for us being able to really evaluate guys as seniors, you hope that shines through as a guy continues to improve. It's not a deal where a guy really flashes as a junior, does well at a camp, and then levels off. That's probably not the kid that we're interested in, because our kids need to be trending the right way, and they hopefully have the ability to continue to trend while they're here. So they maybe all have a story in some regard why they are signing at the FCS level versus maybe the Power 5 level or whatever. But whatever that part of the story is, we'll not compromise on that competitive nature, that hunger to be part of something bigger than themselves.
On that note, I want to ask you about Mason Deathman, because he's an outstanding athlete, but he's been playing in the middle of nowhere 6-man football. So it seems like he's like kind of the next in line of these guys that might have that crazy upside.
Yeah, we sure hope so, and I think it certainly helped. The example that Brody has been able to lay in front of him. Brody dates his sister. Sidebar, I guess that doesn't hurt. But then, Bryce in the middle. Bryce played 6-man. Brody didn't play 6-man. Bryce and Mason were on the same field 2 years ago, and it was those two playing one-on-one, and there was 10 other guys out there. So I think that's what you got to be able to paint a picture of. Hey, here's how we see you. You might not see yourself quite like this, especially coming out of a junior year, but here's how we see you. And I remember Mason asked me back in February. He goes, well, what do I need to weigh? I said, I don't even care what you weigh. What do you weigh right now? Like 190 pounds. And I said, what do you think Brody weighed when he was a senior? Oh, 190 pounds. So I think just being able to paint that picture, but really be able to see something in him, whether it is Mason, whether it's Bryce Grebe, Brody Grebe, obviously Trayton Pickering, just because they come from a Class C environment, it shouldn't hold them back. So, really excited to add Mason and have a Class B player, have a Class A player amongst the Class AA players in the state as well.
Just having that ability. I mean, people in Montana, they're going to be analyzing this. They love kids from Montana. So having sort of the leeway and also the patience from like the fan base and the boosters and stuff to know that guys, because you have so many stories of this, right? Guys that have become great players. So I mean, do you like that as a coach, just sort of knowing that it is about the development in the long term?
Well, absolutely. The more guys on this list, say in 3-4 years, that people will say, how did they end up at Montana State? That's what you want. And whether that's an in-state kid or an out-of-state kid, in particular those in-state stories, where did Trayton Pickering come from? What did he look like? So now that he's this as a senior, this fully grown man, certainly the same would be said about Brody as he enters his senior year. Yeah, I mean, because guys need to develop for us. Our stars are guys that probably aren't absolute stars coming out of high school for whatever reason, whether it's where they're from, their size, you name it, whatever that story is, and then to be able to capitalize on where they are at as 17 or 18-year-olds and allow them to become something different by the time they're 21, 22. That's what this is all about. And recruiting again becomes so much about rankings and stars, and that's all based off of who knows what. It certainly isn't the greatest predictor. I know that much. So we want guys that are that they ultimately see what they can become. They want to become all that we see in them, and then they're willing to put the work in and do it at a place that they're having a great experience at.
Because that was sort of part of your story as a player too. I mean, does that like give you more belief in this system, or I mean, how does that part fit?
Well, maybe not so much me as a player necessarily. I don't know about that, but I recruited small town North Dakota and Minnesota for the better part of a decade, and we were committed to that. And the number of players that much like the guys that we're talking about that had success here, they're out there. You got to be able to identify them. You got to be able to know that you can't take them for what they appear right now, and what are they going to become, and how do you see that and get to know them and be able to paint that picture again to what we think they can become. So to have that background, probably more on the recruiting side, more than just my own experience. I know that you can find players anywhere, and that's what we have to be able to do. And I do think we've done a good job here, not only in this group but the previous groups as well.
The other individual guy I wanted to ask about was Keith Christensen, because I mean the kid's a flat winner. He's come on our radio show several times because all he's done is stack up championships. So I mean, what do you think of just the sort of winning mentality that he brings?
Yeah, very impressive. No nonsense. No, he's certainly the star, but you'd never guess it. Part of a successful team is, no one cares who gets the credit, because if you have success, everybody's going to get it. I think he is that in a nutshell. Very, very humble, but how he competed and how he performed in the biggest moments as this season went along, and that on top of what he'd done before was, made it clear that if we can get Key in our program, we can get an opportunity. I'm going to bet on the fact that he's going to do something for us down the road. So, yes, that mentality, and there's a competitor, there's a humble competitor in there, and that's what you want these guys to possess, because they're becoming something bigger than themselves. Montana State is not about one person or any small group of people. It's about everybody doing everything they can within their role to get us where we need to go.
And last one for me, I talked to Denarius McGee about this over the years, and you mentioned it. Guys that come from Texas, they sort of see that parallel of football's a big deal in Montana too. So it's always an acclimation point from guys that come from out of state and warm weather places, but it seems like there's maybe less of a learning curve for those guys.
Yeah, it makes it a lot easier to convince them, and probably, at least in the areas we recruit, having those guys come to a game day environment is so critical, and having them feel that energy, and they're generally a little bit more further along as far as their football intellect and all those things. So, but they love football. I think that's what, in my, I suppose, last 10 years in particular, trying to recruit those population bases of California and Texas. There's no question that those Texas kids that you get, they love football, and they identify certainly with the environment that we have. And some of them think they identify with, I think, the western part of North, or what we bring here, I guess, in Montana. There's a little bit of carryover there, I suppose, but I think it's more just that the football part really does matter, and they see it matters here as well.
Just two quick ones for me. All scholarship, are there any preferred walk-ons in this?
No, it's a combination, and honestly, I'd rather not even separate that out here. Full scholarship, partial scholarships, preferred walk-ons. We're in the business. All these guys are going to get the opportunity, and how it plays out. If we went through the guys that are out there on On Saturdays for us, it would be the same combination, and obviously the scholarship piece does work itself out as we go along. But at this level, when you have 63 scholarships for 85 guys and you have 109 guys on the team, you know, you need a blend of all of that. So, you know, that's the same with this group. You know, excited to see what they do with their opportunity over the next couple of years.
And then I'm just curious with Dalton Noble, you've had at least one. I know Sean Chambers was a Rutgers commit initially, and then he flipped over to Wyoming. Does that experience with guys like that, did that help you in this situation?
Well, I think different situations, but I think what you do is, you know, like when Dalton called me this fall and said he was committing Army, I said, while disappointed, you know, happy for you. You've made your decision. You're thinking you're doing what's best for him. So leaving those conversations at that, rather than, you know, taking the other direction of saying, well, what the heck are you doing? What are you thinking? Why are you going to a place clear across the country? Any of that. So I think you leave the conversations at that. You don't close the door. I think that's been the best practice. And you know, a situation like happened with Dalton. Dalton came back and was interested in us, and at that time we were still interested. So pleased with how it worked out. But you know, I think it comes down to maybe how you handle that phone call you don't want to get sometimes.